Hello everyone, my name is Vishnu Mano and welcome to the Den. This is the second video in a series of Python tutorials. If you stumbled in on this video, the link to the first Python tutorial is down below. For this tutorial, you need to have Python and VS Code installed. If you're confused about the installation process, visit my previous video in the description box. Go to the directory you created, Python first. Create a new file called learn.py. You can delete the file from the last video or save it for future reference. Today we will be covering lists, conditional logic, and loops. But first, let's review what we learned in the previous tutorial. A quick tangent. There are some basic things you need to know in VS Code. The dot at the top indicates a change in the file. Do Command S to save the files on Mac or Control S on Windows. Also, to run a program, open up a terminal window, navigate to the current directory, in this case Python first, and type Python space the program name. Anyways, our review challenge is to declare two variables of type integer and print the concatenated form. Concatenation is when you add two strings together so they are printed side by side. The problem is that when we declare the two variables, they have to be integers. So let's start from the top. Let's declare two variables, x and y. Set it equal to 10 and 12 respectively. From there, we can convert both of our variables into strings by using the str function. Then, we print the sum of our string, which is in concatenated form. For further confirmation, we can use the type function to print the type of our output. Next up is lists. A list is a collection of data. We use lists to store things like all the staff at a school or all the players on a team. In our example, let's create a list called students. We denote a list by using these square brackets. We set our empty list equal to a variable students. We can add to a list in two ways. Using the initial configuration to start the list with data, or use the append function. The append function allows us to add elements to a list after creating it. If we print out the list here, we get my name followed with my brother's name. We can also delete elements by deleting during the initial configuration or using the remove function. Conditional logic is basically action set up by condition. If something happens, then execute this line of code. If it does not happen, execute a different line of code. This is less formally known as if statements. We can use both else and elif to create counter actions. To create multiple if statements, we can use elif. Else is for the final action if none of the options work out. A loop is executing code a certain number of times repeatedly. There are two kinds of loops, for and while. A for loop is written like this. It creates or uses a variable and runs it through a range of numbers, while executing that code on every number. You can notice this only goes till 9 even though our range is 10. That is because when the program hits 10, it exits out of the loop. So in order to print 10, we have to change our range through 1 through 11. A while loop uses a counter. We can declare a counter x to equal 0. We can then say while x is less than 10, print x. Then increment x by 1 inside of the loop. We can write either x equals x plus 1 or x plus equals 1 as a shortcut. This will execute the same program as our for loop. We will continue using these two loops and identify the different use cases in the future. Now that we have learned about lists, if statements, and loops, let's tie it all together. Let's create a loop which appends into a list every number from 1 through 20. If the amount of elements in our list is less than 10, print true. If it's greater than 10, print false. We start by creating an empty list called nums. We can create a for loop in a range from 1 to 21. Inside the loop, we can append to nums. Since x is already incrementing by 1, we can just append x. Finally, We can use an if statement to print true if the number of elements is less than 10 and false if it's greater than 10. Since there are 20 elements in our list, we should get false. And it works! Thank you so much for watching, and please comment down below if you have any questions that we can help you with. Stay tuned for our next video in this series. We will be posting every week from now onwards.